General Lara Oliveira stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her uniform one last time before the event. Her reflection stared back at her, a strong, determined woman with a career defined by resilience and hard work. The crisp lines of her military attire highlighted her stature, but they could not hide the weight of the expectations resting on her shoulders. Today was a significant day, a moment that could define not just her career, but also the path for many women and minorities in the armed forces. As she made her way to the venue, Lara felt the familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension fluttering in her stomach. The event was a celebration of military achievements, showcasing advancements and recognizing the sacrifices made by those in service. Soldiers from various ranks and backgrounds gathered in the Grand Hall, chatting and sharing stories, their camaraderie palpable in the air. But amidst the celebration, there was an undercurrent of tension. Lara was acutely aware that, as one of the few women generals, she was stepping into an arena still heavily dominated by men. Upon arriving, she was greeted with applause, though she noticed the half-hearted smiles of some soldiers. It was no secret that her position as a general was often met with skepticism. Yet, Lara had always believed that action spoke louder than words. She was determined to show them her worth, not just as a leader, but as a beacon of change in a traditionally conservative environment. As the event commenced, the MC introduced Lara, calling her to the stage. The audience, a sea of uniforms, watched her with a mix of admiration and disdain. She took a deep breath and approached the microphone, her heart pounding in her chest. "Thank you for that warm welcome," she began, her voice steady. "Today, we gather to celebrate not just our achievements, but the diversity that makes our armed forces strong." Lara spoke passionately about the importance of inclusion and the need for a military that reflected the nation it served. She shared stories of soldiers who had inspired her along the way, emphasizing how diverse backgrounds contributed to innovative strategies and united efforts in service. The audience was initially responsive, some nodding along, while others whispered amongst themselves, their skepticism evident. In the middle of her speech, Lara glanced at a group of younger soldiers near the front. They exchanged glances and muffled laughter, clearly mocking her presence. She tried to shake off the hurt, focusing instead on delivering her message. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she continued. "But together, we can foster an environment where everyone's voice is heard and every soldier is valued for their contributions." The applause that followed felt somewhat reassuring, but it was overshadowed by the negativity that lingered. Lara knew the road ahead would be rocky, but she was committed to leading by example. She stepped down from the stage, feeling the eyes of the soldiers scrutinizing her, and retreated to the back of the hall. As she navigated through the crowd, Lara overheard snippets of conversations filled with derogatory remarks. "Can you believe she's a general?" one soldier scoffed. "Just because she checks the right boxes?" Another chimed in, "They're just pushing this diversity nonsense. She doesn't belong here." Each comment stung, piercing through her resolve. Lara's heart sank. She had fought for every promotion, every recognition. Each rank she earned was a testament to her dedication, yet it felt like none of it mattered in the eyes of some of her peers. She had always known that her journey would be challenging, but the blatant disrespect from those she served alongside was disheartening. Feeling a wave of frustration, Lara stepped outside for a moment of air. The crisp breeze hit her face, refreshing but not enough to erase the bitterness inside. She had hoped today would be a step forward, a chance to showcase the progress made toward inclusivity in the armed forces. Instead, it felt like a stark reminder of how far they still had to go. But even as doubt crept in, Lara felt a spark of determination ignite within her. This was not just about her. It was about everyone who had ever felt marginalized in their pursuit of greatness. As she gathered her thoughts, she vowed to use this experience as fuel to drive her forward. The event continued inside, but Laura knew this was just the beginning. The mockery she faced today would not deter her. If anything, it would strengthen her resolve to champion change from within the ranks. As she made her way back inside, she was ready to transform this moment of humiliation into one of empowerment. With her heart set on the future, Laura walked back into the hall, determined to prove that she belonged, not just as a general, but as a leader advocating for a more inclusive military. As the applause echoed in her ears, General Laura Oliveira returned to the event with her head held high, but inside, uncertainty gnawed at her. The speech had gone better than she anticipated, yet the shadows of mockery still loomed large in her mind. She had hoped to inspire her peers and ignite conversations about the future of the military, but the disdain from certain soldiers lingered, casting a pall over her accomplishments. The program continued with presentations and awards, recognizing soldiers for their bravery and service. Laura watched as various individuals received accolades, their families beaming with pride. She clapped along with the audience, masking her discomfort. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, yet the taunt she had overheard hung heavily in the air, reminding her that not everyone was on board with the message of inclusion. During a break, soldiers mingled, and Laura found herself cornered by a group of younger officers who were notorious for their dismissive attitudes. She had seen them in the barracks, making crude jokes and undermining their superiors. As they approached, their laughter fell silent, replaced by smug expressions. "Look who decided to join us," one of them, a fresh-faced lieutenant named James, sneered. "Didn't expect to see you here, General. Thought you'd be too busy with diversity training." The others snickered, and Laura felt her face flush with anger. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her commitment to professionalism. "I'm here to support my fellow soldiers," she replied, keeping her tone calm. "We all have a role to play in shaping the future of our armed forces." "Sure," James shot back, "but do you really think you can lead us? We've seen how the brass promotes the right people these days. It's all about checking boxes, isn't it?" His words dripped with sarcasm, and the others laughed openly, clearly enjoying the spectacle. In that moment, Laura felt the sting of humiliation wash over her. She had encountered discrimination before, but to face it so blatantly in front of her peers was a new level of disrespect. The weight of their laughter felt like chains pulling her down, but she refused to let them see her falter. "I've earned my place here, Lieutenant," she said firmly, meeting his gaze. "I suggest you focus on your own performance rather than making snide comments about others." Her voice wavered slightly, but she stood her ground, knowing that showing any sign of weakness would only encourage further ridicule. James rolled his eyes, dismissing her words. "We'll see how long that lasts, General. Just remember, you're only here because of your skin color. Real soldiers don't get promoted for their race." The group erupted into laughter again, and Lara's heart raced, a mixture of anger and disappointment coursing through her. With every insult, she could feel the confidence she had built over years of hard work beginning to crack. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about her. It was about every soldier who had faced similar battles and had felt the sting of prejudice. This wasn't the legacy she wanted to leave behind. Trying to maintain her composure, Laura forced a smile and stepped away from the group. The humiliation burned in her chest, but she had no intention of letting them see how deeply their words affected her. As she moved toward the exit, she heard whispers behind her, mocking her, belittling her achievements. It felt as if the walls were closing in, each comment a reminder of the uphill battle she faced. Outside, the cool air hit her face, refreshing but not enough to alleviate the heat rising within her. She leaned against a nearby pillar, closing her eyes for a moment to gather her thoughts. It was a cruel reminder of the discrimination that still thrived, even in a space meant for honor and respect. In her mind, she replayed the taunts and jeers, each word an echo of doubt trying to worm its way into her psyche. How could she expect to lead when faced with such blatant hostility? But then, a deeper resolve began to emerge from within. She was not just a general, she was a symbol of change, and that had to mean something. Lara took a moment to breathe, reminding herself of the path that had brought her here. The countless late nights studying, the rigorous training, the sacrifices made along the way. She recalled her childhood, the struggles her family faced, and the resilience they had instilled in her. Each memory fueled her desire to not only rise above this moment, but to challenge the very foundations of a culture that allowed such attitudes to persist. As the event continued inside, Lara knew that this humiliation would not define her. Instead, it would become a catalyst for change. She had to take this pain and transform it into something powerful, something that could resonate beyond herself. The military needed to evolve, and she was determined to be at the forefront of that evolution. With renewed determination, Lara straightened her shoulders and headed back inside. She would not be defeated by a few ignorant comments. The fight for respect and inclusion was far from over, and she was ready to face whatever came next. As General Lara Oliveira stepped back into the hall, the atmosphere felt charged, buzzing with energy, yet tainted by the earlier encounter. She found herself grappling with a storm of emotions, her heart racing. Yet her mind was set on a singular goal: to turn this moment of humiliation into a turning point, not just for herself, but for the entire military community. The event resumed, and Lara forced herself to engage with other attendees, smiling and shaking hands, though her mind was still replaying the earlier taunts. She chatted with fellow generals and high-ranking officers, maintaining her professionalism while feeling a growing resolve to address the biases she faced. If anything, she had become more determined to raise awareness about the importance of diversity and inclusion in the armed forces. During a break in the program, she was approached by a young soldier named Private Jamie Rodriguez. Jamie had been one of the few to clap enthusiastically during Lara's speech, and as she approached, Lara felt a flicker of hope. "General Oliveira," Jamie said, her voice slightly hesitant but filled with admiration. "I just wanted to say how much your words meant to me. It's inspiring to see someone like you in such a high position. It gives us hope." Lara's heart warmed at the sincerity in Jamie's eyes. "Thank you, Private," she replied, grateful for the support. "It's important for all of us to recognize that we can achieve great things, regardless of our backgrounds. We need more voices in leadership that reflect the diversity of our nation." Jamie nodded eagerly. "Exactly. It's so frustrating to see the way some soldiers think. It's like they don't see the bigger picture." Her frustration mirrored Lara's own, and for a moment, they shared a bond built on mutual understanding. Before long, the event was back in full swing, and the audience settled in for the keynote address. A well-respected general, known for his traditional views, took the stage. Lara sat back in her chair, her anticipation mixed with concern. She hoped he would touch on the importance of inclusion, but as the speech unfolded, she found herself disappointed. The general spoke about the strength of the military's history, emphasizing loyalty, discipline, and tradition. While those values were indeed vital, Lara felt a pang of frustration as he skirted around the topic of diversity. His words echoed the same outdated sentiments that had plagued the military for far too long, and she could see a few soldiers in the audience stifling yawns, clearly uninterested. As the speech wrapped up, Lara knew she couldn't remain silent. This was her moment to speak out, to advocate for change. She stood up and approached the stage, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshakable. The audience turned to her, surprise etched on their faces. "Excuse me, General," Laura said, her voice steady but passionate. "While we honor our history, we must also acknowledge the changing landscape of our armed forces. Diversity isn't just a checkbox. It's a strength that we can leverage for a more effective military. When we value all voices, we become stronger and more unified." The hall fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Some soldiers exchanged glances, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Laura felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was a risk, but she couldn't let fear silence her. The keynote speaker cleared his throat, and Laura braced herself for his response. "General Oliveira, while I appreciate your enthusiasm, we must be careful not to undermine the principles that have made our military great," he replied, a hint of condescension in his tone. Laura pressed on, undeterred. "But General, if we don't evolve, we risk becoming obsolete. Our military needs to reflect the society we protect. Embracing diversity and inclusion isn't just about fairness. It's about effectiveness in every mission we undertake." The room remained silent, tension thick in the air. A few brave souls began to clap, their applause tentative but genuine. Laura caught Jamie's encouraging nod from the back of the room, and it bolstered her courage. "Change is hard. I understand that," Laura continued, her voice gaining strength. "But it's necessary. Let's lead by example and create an environment where everyone can thrive. The future of our military depends on it." Finally, the applause grew louder, and Laura felt a wave of relief wash over her. The general on stage attempted to brush off her comments, but the energy in the room had shifted. People were talking, whispering among themselves, considering her words. After the event concluded, Laura was approached by several soldiers who wanted to express their support. It was a mixture of junior officers and enlisted personnel, some of whom had been skeptical earlier but now seemed open to change. Their conversations filled her with hope, and she began to see the potential for transformation within the military ranks. "General," a captain said, "your speech today really resonated with us. We've needed a voice like yours to challenge the status quo. It's about time we had honest conversations about inclusion." Laura smiled, heartened by the support. "Thank you, Captain. It's going to take all of us working together to create real change. I can't do it alone." In the days that followed, the ripples of Lara's bold stance began to spread throughout the military. Discussions about diversity and inclusion became more frequent, and she was invited to speak on panels and in training sessions. It was a start, but Laura knew there was much work ahead. As she walked through the halls of the base, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The earlier humiliation had transformed into something powerful, a catalyst for her mission. She was determined to build a military that not only honored its past, but embraced its future. A military that reflected the strength and diversity of the nation it served. Laura was no longer just a general in a uniform. She was a voice for change, an advocate for all those who had been overlooked. And with every step, she felt the weight of her role as a leader settle comfortably on her shoulders. The days following the event felt like a whirlwind for General Laura Oliveira. Her unexpected speech had sparked a wave of discussions about diversity and inclusion within the military, and she could sense a shift in the atmosphere. But amidst the excitement, she knew that true change would require more than just conversations. It demanded action. Laura spent her days meeting with various groups, from junior soldiers to high-ranking officials, engaging in dialogues about their experiences and the barriers they faced. Each story reinforced her commitment to driving meaningful change. She took meticulous notes, noting down common themes of frustration, fear, and the desire for a more inclusive environment. It was clear that many within the ranks were eager for change, but the path forward was riddled with obstacles. One afternoon, she met with a small group of officers in her office. Among them was Major Thomas, a seasoned veteran who had initially come off as skeptical of Lara's efforts. However, he had surprised her by reaching out, expressing a willingness to discuss the issues that plagued their organization. "General," he began, his tone serious yet open, "I want to understand how we can move forward. There's a lot of resistance to these changes, but I see the value in what you're proposing." Lara felt a surge of hope at his words. "Thank you, Major. I believe the first step is to create a safe space where everyone can voice their concerns and suggestions. We need to encourage dialogue that fosters understanding rather than defensiveness." The room buzzed with agreement as they brainstormed ideas. They discussed forming a diversity task force that would focus on implementing training programs and workshops aimed at educating soldiers on the importance of inclusion. The officers nodded, their enthusiasm growing as they mapped out potential initiatives. However, amid the excitement, Lara couldn't shake the feeling that resistance still loomed on the horizon. During her meetings, whispers of opposition lingered, and she knew that not everyone was on board. The day after her speech, she overheard some soldiers mocking her efforts, questioning her authority. But this only fueled her determination. She refused to back down. As the week progressed, Lara received an invitation to attend a high-level meeting with the top brass. It was an unexpected opportunity, and she knew it could be a pivotal moment for her initiatives. She prepared meticulously, armed with data and testimonies from her discussions, ready to present her case for inclusion. On the day of the meeting, the air felt electric with tension. Lara entered the room, filled with senior officials, and took her seat at the long conference table. The general who had dismissed her comments during the event was there, along with several others who held traditional views. She could feel their skepticism as she introduced her agenda. "Thank you for having me," Lara began, her voice steady. "I'd like to discuss the importance of implementing a diversity and inclusion initiative within our ranks." As she spoke, she presented her findings, statistics on diversity in military leadership and personal accounts from soldiers who had faced discrimination. The data painted a clear picture of the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. Some officials appeared interested, leaning forward to listen, while others sat back with crossed arms, skeptical of her approach. One senior general, Colonel Finch, raised an eyebrow. "General Oliveira, while your passion is admirable, there are concerns about the effectiveness of such initiatives. Many believe we should focus solely on merit and performance, not identity." Lara took a deep breath, knowing this moment was crucial. "I understand that concern, Colonel, but the reality is that promoting diversity enhances performance. Diverse teams bring a variety of perspectives, leading to more innovative solutions and improved mission outcomes. It's not about lowering standards. It's about expanding our definition of what makes a strong leader." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Lara could sense the tension, but she pressed on, determined to break through the skepticism. "We need to recognize that we're not just fighting battles on the ground. We're fighting against outdated mindsets that can hinder our effectiveness. Our military must reflect the society we protect to build trust and confidence among our people." Another general, Colonel Simmons, finally spoke up. "And what do you propose we do, General? Implement quotas? Create a hierarchy based on identity?" His tone was sharp, and Lara felt the familiar sting of defensiveness from those who feared change. "No, Colonel," Lara responded firmly. "This isn't about quotas. It's about creating pathways for everyone to succeed. We need to invest in mentorship programs, provide training that addresses unconscious bias, and ensure that recruitment efforts reach diverse communities. Our goal should be to create an environment where everyone has equal opportunities to thrive." As she concluded her presentation, she felt the air shift in the room. Some of the officials were deep in thought, while others still wore skeptical expressions. But for the first time, she sensed a crack in the armor of resistance. After the meeting, as attendees began to file out, she overheard snippets of conversation. Some were voicing concerns, but others expressed intrigue at the prospect of a more inclusive military. Lara felt a glimmer of hope, but knew that the battle was far from over. Days turned into weeks, and the discussions continued to evolve. While Lara faced pushback from some corners, she also received messages of support from others who recognized the importance of her mission. Slowly, her vision for a more inclusive military began to take shape, albeit amid ongoing challenges. Lara remained resolute, knowing that every step forward, no matter how small, was a victory. As she prepared for the next round of meetings and initiatives, she reminded herself that change was often a slow process, but with determination and perseverance, it was possible. At the end of the day, Lara sat in her office, reflecting on the journey ahead. The road was still littered with obstacles, but she was ready to face them head-on. The humiliation she had once felt had transformed into a fierce determination to reshape the military into an organization where everyone could stand tall, no matter their background. As the sun rose over the military base, casting a golden glow over the barracks, General Lara Oliveira felt a renewed sense of purpose. The discussions from the high-level meeting had set the stage for change, and she was determined to keep the momentum going. However, she knew that change was rarely easy, especially within an institution as deeply rooted in tradition as the military. Over the following weeks, Lara organized a series of workshops and training sessions aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion among the ranks. She partnered with experts in the field, inviting speakers who could provide insight into the benefits of a diverse military force. The turnout was promising, and she was heartened to see young soldiers eager to learn and engage in meaningful conversations. During one of the workshops, a young private named Alex approached her. "General, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate what you're doing. It's nice to see someone in a position of power advocating for us. It gives me hope," he said, his eyes filled with sincerity. Lara smiled, grateful for his support. "Thank you, Private. It's essential that we all work together to create an environment where everyone feels valued and heard." However, as she walked away, Lara overheard some soldiers whispering at the back of the room. "What's the point? It's not like anything will change. This is just another PR stunt," one of them scoffed, crossing his arms defiantly. Her heart sank, but she refused to let it discourage her. Instead, she focused on the positive feedback from those willing to embrace change. Yet the undercurrent of resistance continued to surface, manifesting in subtle ways. Snickers during meetings, dismissive remarks, and a general reluctance to participate in the new initiatives. One afternoon, Lara received an invitation to attend a community event to meet with local leaders and citizens. It was an opportunity to bridge the gap between the military and the community, a crucial step in her vision for a more inclusive environment. She knew that forging these connections would help build trust and foster a greater understanding of the military's role in society. The event was held in a vibrant park filled with families enjoying the sunny day. As Lara mingled with attendees, she listened to their stories and concerns. Many spoke of their admiration for the military, but there were also voices of skepticism about how the military had historically treated marginalized communities. Lara understood that acknowledging these concerns was essential in moving forward. When it was her turn to speak, she addressed the crowd. "I want to assure you that we are committed to improving our relationships with the communities we serve. We recognize that change is necessary, and we're listening. We want to learn from you and ensure that our military reflects the values of inclusivity and respect." The crowd responded positively, with applause echoing around the park. Lara felt a sense of pride swell within her, knowing that she was making a difference in the community's perception of the military. Yet, lurking in the back of her mind was the knowledge that not everyone would be on board. Returning to the base, Lara faced a significant challenge. Some of her fellow generals remained resistant to her initiatives. Colonel Finch had publicly voiced his discontent during a command briefing, insisting that resources should not be allocated to diversity training when there were pressing operational needs. We need to focus on readiness, General. These workshops are taking time away from our primary mission, he argued, his arms crossed and eyes narrowed. Colonel, I understand your concerns, Lara replied, maintaining her composure. But investing in our people is investing in our mission. A more inclusive force will lead to better cohesion and effectiveness in the field. Finch shook his head. I think you're overestimating the impact of these initiatives. We can't afford to distract our soldiers with what you're calling important conversations. They need to be ready for the next deployment, not sitting in workshops. Feeling the weight of the room's scrutiny, Lara knew she had to pivot her approach. She decided to invite a panel of experts to speak at the next command briefing, showcasing the real-world benefits of diversity in military settings. This could help bridge the gap between theory and practice for those who remain skeptical. As preparations for the briefing progressed, she faced another obstacle. Some of her allies began to waver under pressure. Major Thomas, who had initially supported her initiatives, expressed doubts during a private conversation. Lara, I'm starting to feel the heat from some of the higher-ups. They're not happy with the direction this is going. Are you sure it's worth it? Lara's heart sank at his words. I understand the pressure, Thomas, but we can't give up now. Change is rarely easy, and we need to be the ones to push for it. If we back down, we'll be sending a message that our commitment to diversity is conditional. Thomas nodded, but his expression showed concern. Just be careful. You have a lot on the line. The wrong move could jeopardize your career. With his warning echoing in her mind, Lara felt a familiar tension in her chest. She knew she had to remain steadfast, but the fear of failure loomed large. As the day of the command briefing approached, her anxiety mounted. Would the experts sway the opinions of her fellow officers? Or would they further entrench the skepticism that had already taken root? On the day of the briefing, Lara stood in front of the panel, a mix of excitement and apprehension swirling within her. She introduced the experts, professionals who had studied the impact of diversity in military operations, and watched as they presented their findings. Their insights were compelling, illustrating how diverse teams had outperformed homogeneous ones in various military exercises. As the presentation progressed, Lara noticed a subtle shift among the attendees. Colonel Finch sat with a furrowed brow, his skepticism wavering as the experts laid out concrete evidence of the benefits of diversity. After the presentation, a discussion ensued, and to Lara's surprise, several officers began to ask questions, engaging with the material presented. The atmosphere in the room shifted from defensiveness to curiosity. While not everyone was convinced, there was a palpable sense of openness in the air. As the briefing came to a close, Lara felt a surge of hope. Perhaps the tide was turning. While she knew there would still be challenges ahead, she felt empowered by the progress they had made. Change was not a sprint, but a marathon, and she was ready to continue the journey. That evening, as she sat in her office reflecting on the day, she felt the weight of the responsibility resting on her shoulders. The road ahead would be long and filled with hurdles, but Lara was committed to her mission. She would not let the voices of doubt extinguish the flame of change she had ignited. The following weeks proved to be both challenging and rewarding for General Lara Oliveira. The command briefing had marked a pivotal moment in her efforts to foster inclusivity within the military, but the journey ahead was far from smooth. Although the interest in her initiatives had grown, Lara was acutely aware that not everyone was on board. As she walked through the barracks one morning, Lara noticed a group of soldiers gathered in the common area, their voices hushed but intense. Curiosity piqued. She approached to overhear snippets of conversation. Can you believe what they're trying to do? This is a distraction from real training, one soldier scoffed. Another nodded, adding, we should be focusing on combat readiness, not this diversity nonsense. Lara's heart sank at the resistance, but she remained committed to her vision. The whispers she had heard weeks ago were now transforming into louder dissent, and she knew that addressing this skepticism head-on was crucial. She gathered her team and brainstormed ways to engage soldiers more effectively. They decided to hold an open forum, allowing soldiers to express their concerns in a safe environment. The goal was to foster open dialogue, bridging the gap between those who supported her initiatives and those who remained skeptical. Laura felt a mix of apprehension and excitement as the date of the forum approached. On the day of the event, the atmosphere in the auditorium was charged. Soldiers filled the seats, and Laura could sense the tension in the air. This was their chance to discuss the pressing issues directly. As she took the stage, Laura felt the weight of expectation resting heavily on her shoulders. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady but warm. "I know there are strong opinions on both sides regarding our diversity initiatives. Today, I want to hear from you. This is a space for open dialogue where we can share our thoughts and concerns." As the forum progressed, Laura listened attentively to the soldiers. Some expressed frustration over the perceived focus on diversity over combat readiness, while others shared personal experiences of feeling marginalized within the ranks. Each comment was met with respect, and Laura made it a point to validate their feelings. "Your concerns are valid," she acknowledged. "I understand the pressure you feel to maintain operational readiness. However, I believe that by fostering a more inclusive environment, we will ultimately strengthen our unit's effectiveness in the field." As the discussion continued, Lauren noticed a shift in the room. Soldiers began to engage in dialogue with one another, sharing their experiences and perspectives. The open forum provided an opportunity for them to see each other as individuals rather than just fellow soldiers. Slowly, the walls of skepticism began to crumble. Towards the end of the forum, a soldier named Sergeant Mitchell, who had been quiet for most of the discussion, finally spoke up. "I've always thought this whole diversity thing was a waste of time," he confessed, looking down at the floor. "But hearing everyone's stories today made me realize I've been looking at it all wrong. Maybe it's not just about me. It's about the team." Laura felt a wave of relief wash over her. "That's exactly right, Sergeant. Our strength lies in our diversity, and when we come together, we can achieve incredible things." As the forum concluded, many soldiers approached Laura with renewed enthusiasm, thanking her for creating a space where they could voice their opinions. She felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that they had taken a significant step toward fostering understanding and cooperation within the ranks. In the days following the forum, Laura noticed a subtle change in the atmosphere around the base. More soldiers were participating in the diversity training sessions, and discussions about inclusivity were beginning to take root in everyday conversations. However, the seeds of dissent were still present, lingering just below the surface. Laura was determined to keep the momentum going. Inspired by the positive feedback, she organized a community service event, inviting soldiers to participate in a local outreach program that focused on mentoring youth from underrepresented backgrounds. The initiative aimed to give soldiers a chance to connect with the community while promoting the military's commitment to diversity. The day of the outreach program arrived, and Laura was pleasantly surprised by the turnout. Soldiers of all ranks showed up, ready to make a difference. As they worked side by side, mentoring the youth and engaging in various activities, Laura witnessed the power of connection firsthand. Among the children was a young girl named Mia, who shyly approached Laura. "Are you really a general?" she asked, wide-eyed with curiosity. Laura smiled, kneeling down to meet Mia's gaze. "Yes, I am. But what matters most is that I'm here to support you and help you believe in your dreams." Mia's face lit up with excitement. "I want to be a soldier like you when I grow up," she exclaimed. Laura's heart swelled with pride as she saw the impact of her work unfolding before her eyes. This was what she had envisioned, a future generation inspired to serve and break barriers. However, the joy of the day was short-lived. As the event wrapped up, a small group of soldiers lingered at the back, visibly disgruntled. Laura overheard one of them muttering, "This is just a way to distract us from our real duties. We should be training, not babysitting." Feeling the weight of their hostility, Laura approached them, determined to understand their concerns. "I see you're not happy with today's event. Can we talk about it?" she asked, maintaining a calm demeanor. The soldier who had spoken up, Corporal Jennings, looked at her defiantly. "We're soldiers, General. We should be focusing on our mission, not trying to play nice with the community. It's a waste of our time." Lara took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I understand your frustration, Corporal, but building relationships with our community is part of our mission. It's about trust, respect, and being leaders. We can be effective soldiers and still make time for service." Jennings crossed his arms, his skepticism evident. "I don't think you understand the pressure we're under. We need to focus on combat skills, not community service." Lara felt the familiar knot of tension in her chest. She knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but she refused to back down. "I do understand. The demands of our duties are immense. But if we want to be the best we can be, we must also learn how to connect with the people we serve. It's all part of the same mission." As she spoke, she realized that this conversation represented a turning point, not just for her initiatives, but for her own leadership journey. She was willing to face resistance head-on, even when it was uncomfortable. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Lara felt a renewed sense of determination. She might not win everyone over, but she was committed to forging ahead. Each conversation, each connection, was another step toward a more inclusive future. That night, as she reflected on the day's events, Lara understood that the battle for inclusivity would not be won overnight. There would be more challenges, more skeptics to face. But she was ready to lead the charge, armed with the conviction that change was not just necessary, it was inevitable. The weeks that followed the community outreach event were a whirlwind of activity for General Lara Oliveira. Despite the resistance she faced, momentum was building around her initiatives. Soldiers who had previously been skeptical were beginning to engage with the concepts of inclusion and diversity, slowly changing the culture within the ranks. One particularly rainy Thursday morning, Lara was invited to speak at a regional military conference, a gathering of senior officers from various branches of the armed forces. This was a pivotal opportunity for her to present her vision on inclusivity, not just within her division, but across the military. Lara spent hours crafting her speech, wanting to make a compelling case that resonated with the attendees. As she arrived at the conference, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Officers in crisp uniforms milled about, engaging in animated conversations. Lara felt a familiar mixture of nerves and excitement, a spark of determination igniting within her. The conference hall was large, with rows of seats filled with high-ranking officers. As she took the stage, Lara caught sight of familiar faces. Some of the soldiers from her unit were present, supportive and curious. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and began. "Good morning, everyone," she started, her voice firm yet inviting. "Today, I want to discuss the importance of inclusivity in our armed forces. We are facing a changing world, and our ability to adapt to this change will determine our effectiveness as a military." Lara shared statistics that highlighted the benefits of diverse teams, emphasizing how varied perspectives lead to better problem-solving and increased operational effectiveness. She recounted her experiences with her unit, particularly the moments that highlighted the strength that came from embracing diversity. The audience was engaged, their attention unwavering as she spoke. When she concluded her presentation, she opened the floor to questions, eager to foster an open dialogue. Hands shot up, and Lara welcomed each question, addressing concerns and doubts with clarity and respect. One senior officer, Colonel Brooks, stood up, his face serious. "General Oliveira, I see the merit in what you're saying, but how do you propose we implement these changes without compromising our core mission? There are many who believe that focusing on diversity distracts us from our primary responsibilities as soldiers." Lara met his gaze with confidence. "Colonel Brooks, inclusivity is not a distraction. It is an enhancement. Our mission is not just to be soldiers, but to be leaders to serve our nation effectively. When we embrace diverse perspectives, we are better equipped to face challenges on the battlefield. It's about building a stronger, more cohesive unit that can adapt to any situation." The conversation continued, and Lara found herself fielding a barrage of inquiries. Each question was a stepping stone, allowing her to delve deeper into the significance of her initiatives. She could see some officers beginning to shift in their seats, their expressions softening as they considered her points. As the conference drew to a close, Lara felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. She had presented her vision to a room full of decision-makers, and for the first time, it felt like she was making headway. As she stepped down from the stage, several officers approached her, shaking her hand and expressing their appreciation for her insights. "Thank you, General. Your perspective has given me a lot to think about," one captain remarked, his demeanor noticeably warmer than it had been earlier. "Absolutely. We need to find ways to bridge these gaps," another officer added. Lara left the conference feeling energized. It was clear that she was not just planting seeds of change within her unit. She was beginning to impact the wider military community as well. Back at the base, Lara continued her efforts to foster a culture of inclusivity. She introduced mentorship programs, pairing seasoned soldiers with new recruits from diverse backgrounds. The initiative aimed to cultivate understanding and camaraderie among soldiers, breaking down barriers and fostering respect. However, the journey was not without its obstacles. Some soldiers remained staunchly resistant, often vocal in their disdain for the initiatives. During a training session, Lara overheard a group of soldiers dismissing the mentorship program as a waste of time, claiming it undermined their operational efficiency. That evening, she decided to address the troops directly during a routine briefing. As she stood before her soldiers, she could feel the weight of their skepticism. "I know that some of you have concerns about the mentorship program," she began, her voice steady. "But I want to assure you that this initiative is not just about being politically correct. It's about creating a stronger military unit. Diversity isn't merely a buzzword, it's a strategic advantage. When we understand each other better, we can function better as a team." Lara's words hung in the air, and she could see some soldiers beginning to shift in their seats, their expressions betraying the reluctance that had previously marked their faces. To foster dialogue, she opened the floor for questions once more. As soldiers began to express their doubts, Lara listened intently, addressing each concern with patience and understanding. Gradually, the tension began to dissolve as conversations grew more constructive. In the days that followed, a significant breakthrough occurred. One afternoon, Lara received an unexpected email from Colonel Brooks, the officer who had challenged her at the conference. He invited her to collaborate on a training program that would integrate her initiatives on inclusivity into the core training curriculum. "I've been thinking about what you said, General," the email read. "Your perspective is refreshing, and I believe we could create something impactful together. Let's meet and discuss this further." Lara could hardly believe her eyes. This was a monumental shift, and she was eager to embrace the opportunity. They arranged to meet the following week, and as Lara prepared for their discussion, she felt a renewed sense of hope for the future of inclusivity within the military. However, as the meeting approached, Lara also felt a pang of uncertainty. Would this collaboration lead to meaningful change, or would it fizzle out like so many other initiatives? The thought lingered in her mind as she headed into the meeting with Colonel Brooks. The moment she stepped into the conference room, Lara was greeted by the sight of Colonel Brooks reviewing notes. He looked up and smiled, a gesture that felt genuine, indicating a willingness to engage. "Thank you for coming, General. I think we have a real opportunity here," he said, his tone more open than before. "Let's explore how we can weave inclusivity into our training programs." As they began to brainstorm ideas, Lara felt a sense of excitement building. This was not just about her. It was about creating a legacy of change within the military. And with each idea they exchanged, she realized that they were forging a partnership built on mutual respect and a shared vision. As they wrapped up their meeting, Lara left with a sense of purpose stronger than ever. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the first time, it felt like a breakthrough was within reach. She had taken a significant step toward a future where her dream of an inclusive military could become a reality. The day had finally arrived for the launch of the new training program that General Lara Oliveira and Colonel Brooks had been working on for weeks. It was a momentous occasion, not just for Lara, but for the entire military community. This initiative represented a tangible commitment to inclusivity, a chance to reshape the future of their armed forces. As she prepared for the event, Lara reflected on the long journey that had led her here. She had faced ridicule and doubt, yet she had persevered, driven by the belief that every soldier deserved to be seen and respected. The training program would include workshops on diversity, cultural competence, and strategies to foster an inclusive environment, all designed to encourage understanding and camaraderie among soldiers of different backgrounds. The venue was buzzing with energy, a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Soldiers, officers, and civilian staff gathered, their conversations a blend of curiosity and skepticism. Laura took a moment to absorb the scene, her heart racing. This was it. The culmination of her efforts was about to unfold before her eyes. Colonel Brooks stood by her side, reviewing the agenda one last time. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, a hint of pride in his voice. "I am," Laura replied, determination shining in her eyes. "I've never been more ready." As they stepped onto the stage, the audience fell silent. Laura took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their expectations. Yet she knew this moment was about more than just her. It was about every soldier who had felt marginalized, every voice that had gone unheard. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Today marks a significant step forward in our commitment to inclusivity within our armed forces. This training program is not merely a requirement. It is an opportunity to strengthen our unit and enhance our effectiveness as a military." Laura outlined the goals of the program, emphasizing the importance of understanding each other's backgrounds and perspectives. She shared personal anecdotes, recounting moments where diversity had led to success on the battlefield, illustrating the value of varied viewpoints in achieving common objectives. As she spoke, she could see soldiers nodding, some exchanging glances as her words resonated with them. The initial skepticism began to melt away, replaced by a growing sense of curiosity and openness. After her presentation, the workshops commenced. Participants were divided into small groups, engaging in activities designed to foster discussion and understanding. Laura floated between the groups, witnessing firsthand the transformation taking place. Soldiers were sharing stories, laughing, and sometimes grappling with uncomfortable truths, yet all were united by a desire to learn and grow. In one group, a young private spoke up, sharing his experience of feeling overlooked because of his background. "I never thought anyone cared about where I came from until today," he admitted, his voice filled with vulnerability. "I thought I had to hide who I was to fit in." Laura felt a surge of emotion. This was why she had fought so hard. "You don't have to hide," she replied warmly. "Your experiences are valuable, and they enrich our military. Together, we can create a space where everyone feels empowered to contribute." As the day unfolded, Laura was overwhelmed by the positive responses. Officers who had once been dismissive of her initiatives were now actively participating in discussions, acknowledging their biases and expressing a willingness to change. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a sense of hope and possibility. Later that evening, a formal dinner was held to celebrate the launch of the program. Officers from all branches mingled, sharing their thoughts and impressions of the day. Laura was approached by Colonel Brooks, a broad smile on his face. "You did it, General," he said, raising his glass. Today was a game changer. Laura felt a warmth spread through her. "We did it," she corrected him gently. "This is a team effort, and it's just the beginning." As they toasted to the success of the program, Laura reflected on how far she had come. The challenges she faced had not been in vain. They had forged a path for future generations of soldiers. She envisioned a military where diversity was celebrated, where every soldier felt valued and respected. In the months that followed, the impact of the training program rippled through the military. Soldiers began to embrace inclusivity not just as a concept, but as a vital part of their identity as service members. Initiatives inspired by the program emerged, each building on the foundation of understanding and collaboration that Laura had worked tirelessly to establish. One day, as Laura walked through the base, she encountered a group of soldiers engaged in a discussion. They were animated, exchanging ideas on how to further promote inclusivity within their ranks. She felt a swell of pride. This was the legacy she had hoped to create. "General, come join us," one of the soldiers called out. "We're brainstorming ideas for a community outreach event to celebrate diversity." As Laura joined the circle, she couldn't help but smile. This was her vision in action, soldiers taking ownership of the change and pushing it forward. They were no longer waiting for someone else to lead. They were stepping up to shape their own future. In a powerful moment of reflection, Laura stood at the center of the group, looking into the eyes of the soldiers before her. Each face was a reminder of the journey they had undertaken together, a testament to resilience, unity, and growth. "Thank you for your commitment," she said, her voice steady. "Together, we are creating a military that reflects the values we hold dear. A place where every soldier can thrive, where diversity is not just acknowledged but celebrated." As they discussed their ideas, Laura realized that the seeds of change she had planted were flourishing, creating a legacy that would endure for years to come. The future of the military was bright, and it was in the hands of a new generation of leaders, committed to fostering an inclusive environment for all. With renewed energy, Laura was reminded of her purpose. She was not just a general. She was a catalyst for change, a beacon of hope for those who had felt unseen. And as she looked around at the soldiers, all engaged and invested in building a better military, she knew that together, they were writing a new chapter in their history, a chapter of respect, inclusion, and unity.